Okay, close your eyes. Imagine you're a kid again and you're just getting home from school. Do you remember playing Pokemon and how magical it felt? Remember sitting there and going back and forth between which starter you wanted to choose and bring with you across this epic journey? Maybe you were like me and got immersed in the games when you were a kid that you felt like just like Ash from the anime, going on this adventure through a world, wanting to catch them all, defeat every gym leader. Remember eventually just wanting to defeat the Elite Four and become champion? And along the way, stopping to defeat whatever villainous group or organization you were up against while trying to uncover hidden mysteries along the way? Well, fast forward to today, and Pokemon just doesn't feel the same anymore, does it? The newer games are lacking in story and graphics, and personally, I think that the Pokemon designs have gotten a lot worse. I don't know if I'm in the minority there, but they don't feel the same. Overall, the franchise just doesn't feel like it's innovating enough to me. And for a little background, I've played every mainline Pokemon game since my dad picked up a copy of Pokemon Red from a local flea market when I was a kid, all the way through Pokemon Sword. And I've watched my son play through Pokemon Violet. I've been a fan of the anime. I've collected the cards. There's I am truly a Pokemon fan. Now, speaking to the story, older generations of Pokemon had clear stakes. Earlier games featured a defined conflict between evil organizations like Team Rocket and their corruption, or Team Galactic's God Complex. Villains had coherent and clear motivations. Maybe it's just me, but as the player, I felt like I was a part of larger world altering events and not just the side story. The older region's story reflected their themes. Like, just do you remember Sinnoh's myths about creation and Unova's commentary about freedom and control? It all was more complex than just a kid's game. More modern titles like Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, they feel disjointed with disconnected plots and abrupt shifts in tone. The story has shifted from philosophical and sometimes emotional to surface level adventure that's really hard to get into. And I know a lot of people say it's a kid's game, and I would argue that the average Pokemon player today is probably between 25 and 30. Something that I've noticed that's really bothered me over the years is the character depth. Rivals and NPCs had their personalities and arcs and fun backstories. Rivals used to be competitive and confrontational and motivating. They used to treat you as a true rival. They wanted to beat you. I remember getting so pissed when I was a kid when I'd see blue or silver again, and I was ready just to throw down. I didn't care. I just wanted to beat them. They had attitude and ego. I just didn't want to put up with it. And I don't think you did either. Beating them felt earned, like overcoming a real obstacle. I felt like they pushed me to improve, and I really wanted to make sure that the next time I see them that I could beat them. Swapping out my team or learning certain moves, remembering their team and what they would evolve into. And then we have modern rivals, which have become more of like cheerleaders. They're supportive companions rather than a true rival. They celebrate your victories and really don't drive you to get stronger. They're just overall become easier. Your rival in newer games picks a starter that is weak to your starter, which is just making the game less challenging. And at times, I feel bad because they're asserting themselves as our rival and they have a dream of their own that we're kind of preventing them from achieving at times. Now, moving to Pokemon designs, older generations felt organic. They felt like wild creatures that lived in this world. Even when inspired by objects, like you could use Magnemite as an example, it felt alive. Modern designs feel like a lot of the time random, or oh, it's just an object with eyes like Klefki or Varoom. And anymore, there's always some mechanical gimmick like Mega Evolutions, which I love, by the way. I love Mega Evolutions. That's one reason that I got into a few more of the newer games was Mega Evolutions. That was my initial hype when hearing about ZA and Mega Evolutions, but We also have Dynamaxing, uh, Peristalizing. I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation, but it just, it's not the same. Regions used to have strong, cohesive identities. Recent generations feel inconsistent, random, like I said. Pokemon no longer always feel like they belong in their own region. At times it's random. There are some Pokemon that look like they're more like a Digimon or a Mega Man character, like Ceruledge. Ceruledge just reminds me of like Proto Man from like Mega Man Battle Network. Moving on to graphics, like we've previously had jumps in graphics or style throughout the franchise. And I know that Game Freak is working on a new game that it looks amazing. And I'm not saying that Pokemon should go that far. I do like the older art styles, but we could do some improving. One of the biggest changes in the entire franchise was going from 2D sprites to 3D models. I remember how thrilled and excited I was watching the trailer for Pokemon X and Y, but anymore, I don't think much has changed. Like we still have these 3D models that are similar to what we had on the 3DS, and here we are with ZA on the Switch too, and not much has changed overall. Sure, we've gone more toward an open world setting, but that open world feels empty. Older games and routes were dense and felt planned out, and to me, the world felt more alive, even for it being older and on a dated system like the Game Boy Advance. It just felt better. And I mentioned a lack of innovation, and I'm not saying there hasn't been any. It's just it's felt more like it's half-assed. When I was a kid, I remember being amazed by the day and night cycle, which came later with some evolution paths that were dictated by what time of day it was. In Generation 3, they introduced new abilities and natures that expanded on competitive depth. Generation 5 had animated sprites. Newer gens add temporary gimmicks, like I mentioned before, like Mega Evolutions and Dynamaxing, and then they just get rid of them in the next generation or the next game. Newer systems pretty much just reset instead of building on them, which I think we should do. Why aren't we building on some of these, like the Mega Evolutions or Dynamaxing? There's something else we could do there, I'm sure. Really poking at Scarlet and Violet, I feel like we were promised an open world experience, but it just felt so surface level. We had empty fields, copy and paste raids, and there were NPCs that just stood there. And I felt like we could do more with NPCs. Like imagine if they had a pathing system throughout the cities that they were in to feel more alive, that every NPC was wandering in and out of shops or around the town. You might find them sitting in their house. So when you visit a town or city for the first time, you may have missed an NPC that has some sort of side quest for you, an item to give you, or a Pokemon trade to offer. It gives you more of a reason to revisit each of the cities and try and hunt down and find everyone to talk to. And then there are a few things that have really bothered me over the years. Games have gotten far too easy. I remember almost every Pokemon game I played having to train my team up, even make changes to the lineup just to be able to get past certain gym leaders after a few failed attempts. It took time, and again, those victories felt so earned. I beat Pokemon Sword my first time playing it primarily with just my starter. I rarely had to swap, even in battles going up against my starter Pokemon's weakness. The newer games just take away from any sort of grind, like there's a team EXP share. Why? Why are all my Pokemon collectively leveling up for just sitting on the bench? I understand an item that allows you to have an EXP share, like in older games, that giving it to one of your Pokemon would allow them to get a piece of XP. But do we really need it for everyone? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I also miss the HMs, the hidden machines, like having to go through parts of the story or randomly explore to find things like that would help you along your way, versus having some default system like a flying taxi for fast travel. I don't know. These are just my thoughts, but that's my rant. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, all that YouTube stuff to help me out. And let me know in the comments what you like or dislike about modern Pokemon games, what you wish they would add, and tell me what you miss from older games. or what you just flat out didn't like about older games. But that's it. Until next time,